What's up, Meta Nerds? This breakdown is going to pull from every resource available. Please hit that like button, I could really use your help. But let's look at the Sh'wada pattern supercarrier, or as it's called by the UNSC, the CSO-class supercarrier. This is among the most powerful and imposing warships ever fielded by the Covenant, entering service during the Fourth Age of Conversion. I've mentioned a million times that we have no way of converting those ages into our human calendar time, but that very well could be hundreds of years ago. And this class served as the strategic command vessel, fleet flagship, occupation headquarters, and mobile center of government for major Covenant military campaigns. And just keep in mind that with all the Covenant ships, what humanity designates as a class can often cover multiple patterns, a bunch of individual types of ship, but they all serve the same role, and honestly are almost identical. Technically, the Sh'wada pattern isn't the only thing that fits as a CSO class. And even within the Covenant Navy, which famously has all sorts of gigantic warships, almost always dwarfing the UNSC counterpart, the Sh'wada stood apart as one of the largest vessels ever constructed, at a length of 28,960 meters, or just under 18 miles long. It was more than 5 times the greatest ship ever built by humanity, the UNSC Infinity, or 54 times the Paris class, while its width of 11,447 meters, or 7 miles, it's about half as wide as Manhattan is long. Or if you'd rather visualize it this way, it's more than 3 times the width of Manhattan. And at 152 billion tons, it's the equivalent of almost 203 billion Girolhani, the brutes, or 167 times the Infinity. You might be surprised at how much heavier it is when it wasn't that much bigger in size, but Covenant ships are always magnitudes more dense, due to the technology of their armor and shielding and the reactors to power that shielding. And so you see why this really is a mobile fortress. But to put some respect on the Forerunners, it still doesn't even come close to things like High Charity, and a length, or height, however you want to think of it, of 505 kilometers, or 314 miles, and a mass of 100 trillion metric tons. But it's at least the closest thing since the fall of the Forerunners, the greatest vessel made of this era. While visually it still resembles the Carroll pattern assault carrier, with that iconic Covenant design language of sweeping curves, the bulbous hull sections, and distinctive hook-shaped prow. But it does have a darker coloration, and of course at that size you weren't mistaking it for a Carroll. Though I like to think that some legends might have spread about this thing. It's almost like certain animals, or maybe an exotic car or something. You can imagine some UNSC troopers seeing a Carroll pattern show up, which was an enormous ship, and thinking, damn, is that the Sh'wada? And some more experienced vets saying, you'll know a Sh'wada when you see it. At its size, you really couldn't mistake it for anything else. And how it was treated in UNSC naval doctrine also reflects this, as war games and tactics that were laid out for how to strike this thing read more like a planetary invasion, not normal capital ship combat. And same thing on the Covenant side. This was not just another ship or just a great flagship, but truly like a mobile command base. When you're operating something as enormous as the Covenant fleets, this ship would be more important than almost anything humanity even had a frame of reference to. It was coordinating so many assets, then even saying it's like the capital of some country during a war on Earth, it doesn't even come close to understanding the magnitude of this ship. I want to compare it to Earth in the sense of how important it was, but that's what's terrifying about the Covenant, is that they did have multiples of these ships. It wasn't as important to them as Earth was to humanity. So in one sense, yes, it's this crucial asset for managing multiple star systems, almost like the capital of a mini empire, if you will. And yet, if somehow this was destroyed, it could be replaced, which is just truly a depressing thought for UNSC High Command. And that was a lot easier said than done, as the hull was protected by those advanced nanolaminate armor materials, with the plating reinforced by those powerful energy shields, while 3 massive repulsor engines provided sublight propulsion, and the Covenant Borer Slipspace drive was quicker, more accurate, and more efficient than anything humanity had to offer. And although the exact crew complement is unknown, we do know it's operated primarily by Sangheili personnel, and undoubtedly housed thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of warriors, and was operated by a small army of technicians, navigators, pilots, and as always, religious officials. The larger the ship gets, the more likely it is to serve this religious function as well. And it's funny to say what role it plays other than just command, because of course it could operate as a carrier with enormous amounts of vehicles, aircraft, support personnel, and infantry, but also it's a destroyer and battleship. It has all the weaponry you could ever want. And seen during the invasion of Reach, the supercarrier Long Night of Solace deployed a ton of Covenant forces directly to the planet's surface by using massive teleportation spires. This is something we actually don't see with other Covenant capital ships. This is a great example of the Covenant adapting old Forerunner tech. You see that so many of those old Forerunner sites are just portal happy, while these are based on Slipspace translocation tech. And things the size of dropships like Phantoms would materialize in this space between the upper and lower main sections of this spire structure. And they weren't just used on Reach, but also during the Battle of Arcadia. As for its armament, the primary anti-ship battery consists of 12 Erpion pattern super heavy plasma lances, one of the most powerful direct fire weapons ever employed by the Covenant, with these devastating energy weapons just vaporizing several feet of titanium A-plate armor, slicing through the toughest UNSC ships like butter. Now, although a lot of these look the same, they're of varying power levels, so only a few Covenant vessels have ones that are this strong. We see them on the Rassus pattern interdictor, which has rare Forerunner-derived relic lances, and these do rival the Sh'wadas. But supporting those primary weapons were 20 Ukwa pattern heavy plasma beam arrays and 8 Luxor pattern heavy plasma beam emitters, giving the ship an insane total of 100 heavy plasma beam weapons, each of those being strong enough to take out any UNSC ship. Those Luxor pattern emitters are commonly mounted aboard the Covenant's most powerful warships, like their assault carriers and even major command ships, whereas here on the Sh'wada, they're just backup. And then it still has 32 Myctics pattern heavy plasma torpedo silos, similar to the guided plasma torpedoes employed by the Carroll pattern and Siphon pattern assault carriers. You could argue that plasma torpedoes are one of the more feared weapons during the Human Covenant War, because they were capable of tracking enemy vessels, even going around objects in the way. Over the nearly 30 years of war, the UNSC did develop tactics to try and stay out of the way of these line-of-sight laser beams, but they could just fire volleys of plasma torpedoes that would just hunt down the enemy while you were still delivering other attacks. So this combined effort of plasma lances, beam arrays, and torpedoes all made it the deadliest thing you could come across on offense. But its armament for defense was also extraordinary. To protect this command center from fighters, bombers, missiles, and smaller attack craft, it had a colossal network of pulse laser turrets, a defensive grid that included 800 Ra'aka pattern rapid-fire pulse lasers and 490 Ferial pattern pulse lasers, for a grand total of 1,290 point defense weapons. For comparison, the common Ket pattern battlecruiser only had 50 pulse lasers. The resulting defensive screen here would have made attacks by conventional strike craft exceptionally difficult, to the point that most would have just seen it as not worth it. If the Covenant was willing to dedicate a Sh'wada to something, your best option was likely just to evac. And while of course it was also equipped with the Lux pattern super heavy excavation beam, infamous for their glassing operations, these were actually originally developed to excavate buried Forerunner structures. That's why it's called an excavation beam. Like we saw with the portal at Voy, over the eons since the Forerunners vanished, a lot of these Forerunner structures were deep under the planet's surface. And this device really does perfectly summarize the Covenant, having this dual religious and military role. Each ship was a functioning cathedral, or even like a religious university, where even during fighting, there were religious experts on board that were reminding everyone involved of how any individual battle or conquest played its larger role in the great journey. And while some of the ship's assets were off fighting, other assets might be actively on some archaeological mission, just like what we saw with the ORS-class heavy cruisers. And speaking of those three-letter designations, we don't know what the C stands for. It's probably not Covenant, because the other ones are not that obvious. The S stands for Salvation, showing that it would save souls through the burning with holy fire, which just means it was a dedicated warship. and the O is for ordained, showing that this is a vessel enhanced with Forerunner-derived tech. It has been ordained or blessed by the Forerunners. And the engineers knew that they could lose that blessing, i.e. they could do something to screw up the tech and cause some catastrophic chain reaction that destroyed the entire ship. Again, this blending of abstract religious concepts with very practical technology. And besides just that 3-letter designation, they're also dubbed Class 5 flagship carriers, which recognizes their central role in directing major Covenant military operations. The most famous vessel of the class was the Long Night of Solace, flagship of the fleet of Valiant Prudence, and during the fall of Reach in 2552, this enormous supercarrier served as the spearhead of the Covenant invasion force. From orbit, it coordinated fleet operations, deployed occupation forces, and demonstrated the overwhelming strategic power that made the class so feared. And it would famously take out the UNSC frigate Grafton, but is most remembered for how it was heroically destroyed. Eliminating the Long Night of Solace became one of the most significant victories ever achieved by humanity during the Human Covenant War. During Operations Uppercut and Left Jab, Spartan George 052 transported an improvised Slipspace bomb, delivering it via the Covenant corvette Ardent Prayer, personally guiding it toward the supercarrier, while Spartan B312 ensured the vessel remained on course.
Bad news is, time is fried. I'm gonna have to fire it manually.
That's a one-way trip.
We all make it sooner or later. Better get going, Six. They're gonna need you down there. Listen, Reach has been good to me. Time has come to return the favor. Don't deny me this. Tell him to make it count.
And the resulting Slipspace rupture destroyed both Ardent Prayer and the colossal Night of Solace, eliminating the largest Covenant warship ever encountered by humanity, and getting revenge for their destruction of the second most important human world, as Reach really was just behind Earth in that sense. George's sacrifice deprived the Covenant of a strategic flagship at a critical stage of the Reach campaign, and provided this moral support, showing that even this seemingly invincible CSO-class supercarrier could be destroyed with human ingenuity. The spreading of this heroic story may have saved countless lives during the subsequent invasion of Earth, an attack that would lead to the final downfall of the Covenant Empire. That's it for its breakdown. Please hit that like button. I really need your help. Check out the store linked under the video. Tons of cool stuff from all sorts of fandoms, and anything you buy there helps to keep this channel running. But most important of all, remember, human ingenuity triumphs over even the greatest alien defenses. And may the domain preserve you. Always.